also like owners for some of the tasks, because some of them actually apply tasks moving forward.
Yeah, so it's 10:03. I guess, I'll just start sharing and talk a little. So one of the things that I was inspired at KubeCon from the speeches and stuff was to see how we can bring people in here, and it's very bottoms up, so it's up to them to kind of define what they work on to some degree, but like help people on board a little bit. So that was kind of why I put in the agenda items, that maybe we want to start these meetings by giving people a chance to introduce themselves if they're new. And the reason why I bring it up, we don't need to it's just so we better understand who's here, so we can say, oh, you work on X, that's good to know, maybe I'll reach out to you in the next couple of weeks. So that might be a benefit to just giving people a chance to introduce themselves. So if folks are okay with that, we could get started, and I would just ask if people, I don't know everyone here, I'm sure people have been here before, but if people that want to introduce themselves, take a second and tell us who you are and what you are most interested in, I guess. What brings you here?
I can go first. So I'm Emil Beckmark. I have not been on these meetings before. So we met on, some of us met on KubeCon 2 weeks ago. So I'm involved in the CD events initiative under the Continuous Delivery Foundation. I'm one of the founders of that project, together with Andrea Frittori, who will join anytime. Yeah, I work for Ericsson, based in Sweden. That's my short bio.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Dadisi Senjika, and I work for Apple. I'm on the Spinnaker Technical Oversight Committee, and I got involved with the CDF about this time last year, really looking into interoperability. My team also helps a little bit, we attend the CD event SIG as well, and we're just looking to take advantage of the works here.
Cool. Nice to have a lot of CD events folks here. Thanks for bringing everyone. I see Justin. I see 2 hands. So, jump in and.
So hello, I'm Justin Cormack. I'm now the CNCF liaison for this tag. I've been on liaison for tag security for a long time now, actually. So it's nice to have a change. I'm also the CTO at Docker, and so really interested in the application side of things, in the kind of having more developer focus in CNCF, which has been kind of a very ops focused in many ways, and I think that many of the things that this tag fall in the remit of things that I'm really interested in. And the interfaces, like things like GitOps, as the interfaces between developers and the developer view of applications and the ops view of applications, and the kind of things we can do there. And I think there's a huge amount of exciting things that that need to be done.
Yeah, cool. I like that you mentioned app development in our group. I think that's the default landing place for right now for those kinds of projects is with us. Yeah, Yassine. I'm just going with what I see on my screen.
Hi guys, so I'm Yassine. I'm based in France. First time in this meeting, and I've been able to meet some of you guys at KubeCon a few weeks ago. And I'm working, and I'm one of the maintainers of a project which is named Microx, dedicated to API mocking and testing. And we have submitted to join as a sandbox project. So waiting patiently in a queue, and happy to have a discussion with you guys.
Nice. Thanks for your patience. Yeah, and Yassine, I think you're presenting to us next time, to the folks that weren't at the KubeCon meetup.
Absolutely, 17th, yeah.
Cool. Fatih, you've been waiting.
Hi everyone, Fatih Dermanci, working at the Linux Foundation, leading the Continuous Delivery Foundation. And similar to Emil, this is the first time I am in this meeting, but I've been following the work you have been doing over the last couple of years, and you actually came and presented Potato Head and other initiatives you have within the Tag App Delivery to R6. And over the past couple of years, I've been contributing to the interoperability area before I joined the Linux Foundation. So I'm here to see and discuss the potential collaboration opportunities between Tag App Delivery and CD-MAN's project. Thanks.
Thanks. I see one more hand, Victor.
Yeah, I'm a database guy, so have been joining various open source communities to learn. That's my main goal, because the database I work on is not an open source database. After several months, I've now started contributing in anything database related, including database security, like database on Kubernetes, and then supply chain security. That is the area I'm mostly interested right now. When it comes to this group, I'm also learning. I think I pinged you, Josh, to I want to contribute to the translation localization, and that's one way of my learning. Oh, just one comment about that. They are in the paper at the bottom of it. There's a matrix of tools. Just for newbies, it would be great to, I don't know where, to have some even go deeper into like each group of tools, what they are and what the difference is. Because at this point, it's great to have list them out. It's already helpful. But it'd be great if you had just go into deeper in like diagrams or discussions.
Thanks, Victor. Yeah, actually, I just pasted in there. There is an issue. This came up in the last platforms working group meeting and a couple other discussions in KubeCon, rationalizing the list of capabilities with the landscape, with the coverage of the tags. So yeah, and also going into each one of those has also come up in there's different issues in our repo. So if you're passionate about one of them, that's what we need. We need people. Leading into kind of the next thing here, KubeCon. I think, like I said, one of the biggest learnings for me and other people chime in. Better support folks that want to contribute, enable you to find your own way. Like it's bottoms up. I feel like so it's you identifying what's missing and what you're passionate about, kind of finding the match. But we can help you. We can advertise what's available. So yeah, I think that's shifting into the KubeCon recap here before we go to CD events. I think that was a big thing. So that's why we wrote the contributing doc. We put up the contributing doc with 4 or 5 ways that people can contribute. Check that out. Add to them if you have, or ask questions. I did note. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Whoever's sharing that. I did note that one of the ideas we discussed in the meeting, which I wanted to just kind of bring up again, was because we talked about our prototypes like Potato Head, and maybe we'll build a platform prototype. And one of the things was, how are we going to maintain those? We don't really want to, or we don't want to guarantee we can, but we still want people to come and tell us about the things they've built. So open an issue in GitHub, tell us you want to talk about your prototype platform or GitOps, idea or something, and come talk for 5 or 10 minutes. Another thing, Abby asked me to mention this. We are in the platforms group starting up work on a second follow-on paper. This is like tactics to act. The first paper was kind of sell you on the idea of a platform. The second one is, how do you measure your success, getting deeper in, what are the tactics? So she's organizing a meeting next week if you want to participate. Another big discussion, I think, at KubeCon was how to tag support the technical oversight committee. That's been a discussion forever, it feels like. But definitely, looking over the sandbox projects and things. And now we have Justin here, so that's great. Help guide us.
Josh, do you want to speak a little to some of the changes that are being implemented from the TOC to the tags? That might be useful.
Actually, I am not that familiar with them, so maybe Alex, if you have something concrete to share.
No, I don't have anything verbatim. I suppose with Justin here, we can give some broad strokes of the thinking of devolving some of the responsibilities to help keep the TOC a bit more streamlined. But if nothing's been officially publicated, then we can always wait.
Yeah, it's not yeah, it's not official yet, but it should be soon. But yeah, I mean, I think we've always there's always been a kind of trying to get the right balance, and I think that I think we've gone. There's definitely a feeling that there's definitely the balance has gone too much back to sort of centralizing things in the TOC, which is leading to bottlenecks, which is a bad thing, and having a better role for the tags. I think there's been a kind of sometimes a reluctance to put things on the tags, not knowing whether they'll whether they'll have the bandwidth to deal with them. But the TOC has the same problem, so it's kind of I think that I think that I think we need to get that balance right, and I think that the working with the project in particular is something that we still haven't got right. So there'll be something soon.
I think the rubric that I took away from that was that there is very much still an interest in the tags being powerful capabilities to augment, the ability of the TOC to review projects and to certainly help in some capacities there. So it was a strong indicator of leadership, and I think it's a good sign to me.
Yeah, one of the things that came up, no, that's great. And then one of the things that came up kind of informally in discussions was this new, at least the new sandbox submissions are all in one place. So if anyone wants to go in there and identify, projects that are relevant to us and either ask them to come present like Yasin is going to do, or even if, you evaluate it and you want to share for 5 or 10 minutes, oh, this is the new idea from that project. That's a bottoms up way we can start building that muscle.
That's actually quite a good idea, just because sometimes it's not completely clear which project a tag might map to and vice versa. So, as a representative of this community, you could say, hey, this would be a great thing to come and show to observability or to app delivery, for example.
Yeah, and you never know what ideas will come out. KPT came in like a couple of weeks before KubeCon, and one of the Google people came and presented at one of our lightning talks, and like an idea that they had around converging on that. Whatever, I'm not going to give the idea because then it will just cause a discussion. But it was like so helpful, and it was just all those projects coming in are, that's one of the opportunities, I guess, of being in the tag is you get exposed to ideas early, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the main change for as a tag now is that we didn't really used to look at sandbox projects that much, but obviously they're now nicely available, and at least inviting them to present and having a discussion, I think makes more sense, and also getting ideally then people from other projects to join, because very often the outcome is you should be talking to this project, you should be talking to this project as well. So this is, and we did it before KubeCon, like active reaching out to people, to projects are currently submitting, and they were very positive feedback, Josh, and they joined in. So I think that was good, and we should keep doing this definitely.
Cool. The last item, I guess, here is feedback. We can discuss a tiny bit now, or offline or in the Slack, but we want to know what you all thought about the lightning talks, about having a booth. I can share my thoughts, but that is more yours. What you thought about the session, things we might consider for Chicago or anywhere in between. So I guess I'll just open it for a minute on that.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge right now, and I think this goes back to like overall organization, is that like everything is like crammed into this one day. And it was, I mean, luckily, Josh, you volunteered to drive a lot of this, but there was so much going on in parallel on that one day for tags and projects that it was, I mean, we had like very great attendance. Like the room was packed, but still it was like a lot going on in parallel. And I know with more and more happening, obviously at KubeCon, this won't get easier, but it is a challenge for people, I think, to join those sessions. I think that's like an overall scheduling challenge that maybe Justin, you can also take back to the TOC who's doing this. But there's like just so many parallel happening.
one of, I mean, yeah, I think, I mean, it's a big problem generally. I mean, I think that one, I mean, tag security ended up having starting to organize events outside KubeCon as well in order to have more space. So I think that, you know, there are potentially other options. I know that, I mean, obviously KubeCon has the advantage that everyone's there. But if there's a lot, you know, if there's a lot of interest and people can't get there, I mean, I think I think Chicago schedule for the pre-events is it even shorter? Is it just one day for all pre-events?
I'm not sure.
I don't know that. Yeah, I think actually most of it was one day in Amsterdam, wasn't it? Most of it was on the Tuesday. Hardly anything on Monday. Yeah, I don't know how KubeCon's size can be solved. But yeah,
I thought that's an interesting suggestion about tag security, because next week is, you know, CDF Con and GitOps Con, and maybe, you know, app delivery should focus on that. We were kind of the representatives, although there was a GitOps group and a Flux meetup, I think. But I kind of, I don't know, I kind of feel like we're all just representing pretty similar ideas. So maybe we should emphasize that, you know, the CD conference or the GitOps conference, like security is doing. Maybe that's something.
Yeah.
And I think also the booths are very important. Like we had it this year. Well, we had one last time as well, but this one I think it was like very crowded. And Josh, you spent also a lot of time there. I think that should be really planned, that the tags have dedicated booths where people can be. Like right now we're kind of like competing a bit with the projects, but people did show up, people did engage more than they did in the past. So that is definitely helpful. Might even some point make more sense to have the dedicated booths and maybe the shorter project meetings, because it's going to be packed anyways. But the booths definitely are very important for people to engage with the tags.
Who manned the booth?
Let's do the leads.
Combination of people, mostly Josh, I have to say.
Yeah, Josh was
I mean,
driving a lot.
people come up and ask a lot of questions, then they ask how to contribute. So there's my.
Yeah, I think Josh was there. Thomas, Abby was there as well.
Yes, Abby was very helpful. Somebody came up to me from the tag security conference, because the security group had like a security village. And the person that came up to me, I don't know, I wasn't there, but they were asking like, maybe we can partner next time and do something like App Delivery did here in the same area, because I think the security village was far removed and maybe they weren't getting as much interaction as they wanted. But it seemed like we're both pursuing the same thing. Like we want to be present, we want to help people understand what we're doing and bring them in, and maybe we can partner better on that. That's good feedback.
Okay, should we dive into the CD events discussion? Okay, I stopped sharing here.
Let's do it.
Who wants to kick it off? You, Josh, or should I? And then pass over to the CD events people?
I think you should, Alois. If not, Andrea and Fatih. I don't know.
Yeah, CD events. Yeah, we have first of all welcome of the CD events and CDF people. I think this is a great collaboration. It should have happened quite some time ago. Obviously, that's a very good overlap on the work at the CD events that people are doing on standardizing really communication between the different tools around continuous delivery, which is closely related to app delivery. I think despite us being in different foundations, it's a very good point to collaborate on this, especially as there is now also semantic conventions work, OTel semantic conventions work going on regarding standardizing metadata for continuous delivery. So I think I know that obviously CD Foundation has a wider scope than just cloud native, but I think it's very important that we are aligned and reusing work that has already been done there. It's also great to see the additional momentum there. I know that CD events has been around for a while. That's also great. Actually, people from Apple and others not joining in there, and the great work the team has been doing. So first of all, I think I'll get everybody here a chance to get up to speed on what you're working on, and then really finding out how we can collaborate together here best. Yeah, and I think with this, I'll pass it either over to Andrea or Fatih, whoever wants to take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, I could give a quick intro to CD events. I don't know if everyone is familiar with the project. Does it make sense? I got a couple of slides I use often. I can go through those or can just talk. If you don't mind me sharing for a second, I can go through the project.
Yeah, I think it's visuals usually work well with people.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. Okay, can you see this, the slide?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Alois. So as you were saying, I mean, we in the CDF, we have this CD events project, and the goal really is interoperability. So we want to have a common language for different tools in the continuous delivery space, so they can communicate through the events seamlessly. And yeah, and I agree with what you said, Alois, that there is quite a good deal of overlap with what the app delivery tag seems to be covering in scope. So I think there is a great potential for collaboration. So just briefly, this is, I think, the image, the picture I wanted to show. It's not 100% up to date. We're expanding a bit scope, but to get an idea. So if you consider like a traditional pipeline where you start from code on the left, then you do build, testing, signing, you upload some artifacts into some registry, and eventually you'll deploy. So what we want to do is proceed events is to enable communication through the tools that live in the different areas of this pipeline to communicate through each other, right? And we do it in a way that we want to use declarative events. So the idea here is to have an architecture where each component is sending information about what is happening, like, I don't know, a pull request was created, or a commit was merged in a certain branch in the SCM area, or a test was executed, or artifact was signed. And these events will describe and provide context about other tools, about what they're doing, and they're doing it so in a standard format so that consumers know what to expect and they can use that information to take decisions. But these are not imperative events, so it's not about telling, please start this pipeline. It's declaring what is happening. And then you can have some policies, some triggering component that receives the events. Optionally, it collates them, and then it will trigger then the next step in your event-driven workflow. And I mean, why events? We want basically to take the benefits of event-driven architecture. So this makes your overall CD pipeline more scalable. The different components decoupled. It gives you flexibility, because if you want to add an extra block, you can do it seamlessly. The other components don't need to be necessarily aware about it, and it can be policy-driven. And the other advantage of using this kind of declarative event is that you can also then send all your events to a common broker, and then you can collect them and store them. And then you're accumulating data, and you can crunch this data. Basically, you can build metrics out of it. You can use these events to send notification. You can build views about your workflow-driven pipeline. So there is an extra block here to the right that is not displayed in this picture yet, which is operations. So in the latest specification of CD events, we added events for incidents. So incident generated, incident result, or this kind of events. So we want to extend the scope into the kind of continuous operation space as well. Let's see if there is more. So, this is about the CD event 0.1 release, but it gives you an idea. So we have events grouped in different phases. So we have generic orchestration events about like pipeline orchestration tools. And then we have events for software configuration management, continuous integration, deployment, and operation. And we try to keep in mind some DevOps metrics like the DORA metrics as a reference when we are defining our events, to put enough information there that would allow us to calculate those metrics from the events. Apart from that, we have SDKs. So we have SDK in Go, Java, and Python. And depending on our users and adopters, we plan to build things like JavaScript, Rust, or more SDKs. Right, so this was work in progress when I wrote this, but like incident and remediations, we implemented the first version, but something that we are still working on is to include in the specification how to connect the different events to each other. So we have a few ideas and proposals, and so we target that for the next release.
You mean like correlation, like having a common ID in all of them?
Yes, so correlation, exactly. So basically the ability to have like a shared context that allows you to kind of navigate through the events. And we have one approach that is through explicit links, so that you can have links to an event and say, this event is semantically associated to this other event. So you can say this event was generated because of that other event, or specify some other kind of relationship. And this is an idea that we took from Eiffel, which is another protocol that is using this kind of approach. And another thing that we are considering is having some kind of parent-child relationship, similar to what you have in distributed tracing. Or possibly a combination of the two. So we are working on this. And of course, we are also open to suggestions. So what else we are working on? So we started looking at like supply chain security type of scenarios. So we just added one event about artifact being signed, but we want to have more. So we want to extend the data model for artifacts to include things like SBOM, provenance. And something that we have been asked about is also signing the events themselves. And this might be interesting if you're using events to actually trigger your workflow. You may want to be sure that your event has not been tampered with, to avoid triggering things that you should not be triggering. Like if you're relying on an event to do a deployment in a staging environment, you don't want to do that if the link to the artifact to be deployed there is actually something that was injected maliciously. So that's an area that we plan to cover. I think. In terms of community, here we get some special interest group, as we call them in the CDF. So we work very closely with the interoperability interest group. We have connection with the supply chain and best practices interest groups as well. We started discussing also with the VSMI, so it's a value stream management group. They have some wider scope than CD events, but there are also some overlaps. So we may collaborate with them. And of course, we are very keen in collaborating with this community. So it's not only CDF, obviously, we care very much about the CD space, where whichever community is interested in that. We are being integrated with several tools. And of course, I mean, we have closer contact with tools in the CDF space, but we have been talking also with Flux, Argo, and other communities. Here's some companies that are involved. Yeah, I think I talked enough. So, but yeah, any questions so far?
I suppose I had a few
Comment.
questions. So do you see the eventing system being effectively a signal generator for observability?
I think, yes, so we could see use events for observability. That's one of the use cases we have in mind. And yeah, so you could basically, one of the use cases, for instance, we're seeing in also at IBM, I mean, we have different teams that using different tools, even in the same area. So maybe some use Jenkins, some will use Tecton, some other will use something else, because there is a lot of experience from the engineers in those tools. So they're keen on staying with their tool. And if you these tools being able to report what they're doing with a consistent language, then you can basically observe what is happening across the different tools. So you can have build one single dashboard, and you don't have to, I mean, you can do it even if you have different languages, but then you need to basically adapt the signals that come from the different tools. And yeah.
It feels like as well what you were saying really correlates nicely with app delivery, in that the composite output of the aggregate of the events creates effectively a signature, right? In that I've delivered this application successfully because all the events along the sequence have been composited together, and this is my signature. So there's sort of a security element there as well, right? When you trust the eventing system has articulated all the bits along the process, we could have a really nice story with something like Potato Head or with this platform that Josh is talking about to say, look how the CD events system is effectively checking that journey off. Does that sort of approximately correct in their behavior?
Yeah, I think so.
Have I understood it? Have I understood it correctly? And is that a reasonable example?
It is. I mean, as you said, the assumption, of course, is that you need to be able to trust the events there to be able to do something like that. But that's definitely something that I see as a possibility. I don't know if Emil, you have some other comments. Or...
No, I agree. And then if the events are signed, as you were into as well there, Andrea, if we have them signed and I mean, then we will be able to see that they are not tampered with between being created and being received or consumed. So for sure, yeah, I think so.
Feels like there's a really nice story to tell there with, you know, a CA signing events and delivering an application in a really deterministic way and showing that journey, and that kind of answers the observability question as well. I feel like we could definitely work to make some demonstrations. I know Josh will be chomping at the bit to do something there as well.
So what I think I posted like one issue that you might want to comment on, where we really try to get this into semantic conventions for OpenTelemetry. So the idea is not to create events, but have the proper metadata on traces, because this basically allows you to have an end-to-end trace, more or less from check-in all the way to retirement from production. There are still some challenges to be solved. I think there's also ways to do this, like to create the events natively in Kubernetes to then have tools to subscribe to it. It has this double approach, like one for like documenting things and the other one for subscriptions of tools. And on the Potato Head side, I think what we could do, Josh, is more or less redesign the way we handle examples right now. Like right now we have them in these individual directories, and the maintenance is kind of not as easy nor is the testing, but more or less creating a CD events-based execution flow, a very simple one. And then the individual tools can actually subscribe to take on certain tasks, which would allow way more composability. I think also ties nicely into the work of the platform's working group.
I guess I'm totally down to, I hear what you're saying on the CD events and adding that into Potato Head. Could you elaborate a tiny bit on where that's like platforms in particular?
No, if we built that prototype of a platform, I would
Mhm.
like to see the same events being issued as well as these tools interact with each other. Like I want to know, okay, an image got pulled, it got deployed into this environment, tests got executed, operational issues kind of occurred, it got promoted to a different stage. I think if for that platform, almost for that reference platform that the working group is working on, I think CD event should make it in there as well, and how to easily get this data, because it then ties nicely into observability and other topics. So that would also be, I think, an area where we could collaborate.
Yeah, I got it now, especially with what Andrea said before about also emitting events about runtime or operational things. It's almost like an event bus for infrastructural activity that I want to respond to. Like I could see a database one day emitting an event, I'm ready, or something, so that the workload nodes it can connect and do its thing.
Would it be interesting for you folks to have some collaboration from the Kubernetes kind of angle, emitting events like that? That could be something I could certainly be interested in helping with. For example, if you could tell me, if you could tell me the kind of events, or I could read through the spec, we could certainly bridge that gap to what Josh would want to build as well.
Yeah, I think there are some. Sorry. I mean, there are some certain abstractions in Kubernetes today, like the deployments, or you could think of other things like even rollout from Argo rollout or those kind of things that are a good fit for city events. I mean, we have deployment type of events, so those definitely are the kind of things that we can consider today. Yeah, I mean, we don't have anything really like right now in scope for a more like infrastructure type of events, but it's something we could discuss and see if it makes sense for the scope of the project.
So it kind of like Andrea is and to Alex's question, is kind of what you need now to get the event emitters into every project, like get Argo emitting the right 20 events. Like before we could start pulling them all together, we got to start emitting some.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, what I'm hearing is this talk of event bus versus the events themselves. We don't necessarily have to say that the event bus has to be compatible. I mean, is limited in compatibility to just city events. So that's, I think we can accomplish what we're trying to talk about here without necessarily saying that this has to be like in CD event spec and scope. But the idea of having this kind of like thought process between these groups and bridging that information to build some sort of project that consumes these events and then either gives us visualization or observability or metrics across the door spectrum is, you know, really what I think I'm hearing that we're trying to target as a group. Not necessarily saying that all of this has to be captured in CD events. I think it really helps in terms of the focus, especially for the companies that are not just, you know, cloud native, because there's a lot of other considerations that we're going to have about the events themselves. If you're doing like device deployments or, you know, outside of just cloud or even just bare metal servers, there's some things that we want to consider there in the CD event spec as well. But having this concept of how this event bus is going to perform and what it's going to do and what it can span in scope and understand, that I think is an interesting conversation. That was the first thing I thought of when I saw this project last year, is who's going to build that event bus system and how inclusive is it going to be? And, you know, what are the brokers doing? What do they understand? And could it be modular in its construction? And I think that's what we're talking about, the modular bits in that construction of that process.
That was very succinctly put. Thank you. Just to add to
Every
that,
now and then I
also,
get one. Yeah.
Just to add to that, I suppose also the former part of the conversation is building kind of a reference architecture for a cloud native implementation of this events architecture. Could be what we are defining as a working project.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, sorry, am I interrupting someone? No. I wanted to say that we have a reference architecture initiative within the CDF as well, and we're definitely interested in in having events and city events part of that, and so that's maybe something we could collaborate as well onto.
Is that a general project at CDF, like a potato head kind of thing?
No, it's not a project yet. It's just an initiative that we started and we need to build. It's more an idea at this stage.
Because it's always hard to find maintainers on that, so we can work together.
That reference architecture discussion was a result of our discussions within our special interest group, best practices, because they have the best practice guide published on their website. And when we have conversations with people who want to see things in a more realistic manner, that discussion started. Okay, maybe we should create a reference architecture with, how people can bring up their production systems based on reference architecture and follow the best practices, and perhaps have CD events part of that architecture, so they can have technology agnostic, loosely coupled, production systems, helping them, pushing their software to different types of target environments, cloud versus device, and so on. So as Andrea says, we have been having conversations around that topic, but yeah, it will continue to happen potentially under special interest group best practices.
That's a way, if you all want to even contribute what Alois was saying before, like we have the potato head delivery examples, if we can maybe integrate CD events in there.
Yeah. Is there some like very simplistic general emitter of events where I could say, okay, these are the events that I want to get emitted from different tools, and then because then we could have like all the tools and potato head that have implementation of various stages more or less jump in there and subscribe to those events, which also would make our testing significantly easier. I also don't know what to do. Is there now a defined protocol? Like, was it running via HTTP, gRPC?
Right. So today, CD events, they have a JSON schema that defines the payloads, and we have a binding on top of cloud events, which means you can run on JSON body over HTTP, and that's what we support in the SDKs natively. But you can decide any of the binding that is supported by cloud events as well. Or you could even introduce other bindings if needed. So you could have like the JSON blobs transported as part of, I don't know, open telemetry type of messages if applicable, or other contexts. So right now, right now it's basically the specification is JSON schemas with the cloud events binding.
And the SDKs are meant for folks like Argo to integrate in and then emit, compliant events, right? That's what it's the SDKs that we are using in these projects.
Yes. So right now they're very lightweight, so it basically produce JSON blobs that are compliant with the JSON schemas, and they allow you also to parse them back into some object model with a specific language, so to make it easier to.
They both send and receive.
Yes, that's true for the Golang SDK. But it's a work in progress for the Java and the Python one.
Yeah, about that SDK, I think, Andrea, you didn't have some of the projects that are already on their way to adopt CD events. So maybe I can highlight those projects, because these SDKs are currently in use by different projects. And Java SDK, yes, it needs some work be done there. But last week, actually, the very first version of the Jenkins plugin for CD events was published on plugins website. And also NRFC was accepted by Spinnaker community. But this is with us from Spinnaker TOC, so I am putting links there. And they are all using these SDKs. And for Tekton, for example, I think, Andrea, you work with that. An experimental control for Tekton is available. And outside of CDF, again, I believe TestCube project, which is Kubernetes native test framework, they introduced, they contribute test events, CD events, and they are currently implementing CD event support to within their project. So these SDKs, if more projects start using these SDKs, they will become better, because everyone will find something is missing, something can be made better. So as you highlight, Josh, these SDKs can be used by other projects like Argo, Flux, or Harbor, and so on, because there are different types of events like artifact events, CI events, CD events, and so on.
What would make
Okay,
most
so-
sense for you as the next step?
So if I wanted to get something up and running, I had Potato Head on my computer, and I wanted to start emitting events. Is there sort of a gilded path to just get up an implementation of the event bus? Is that in progress? Has that been done?
So in the proof of concept we have done so far, we used like Kennedy serving as a broker for cloud events, because so that means you can publish events into one bus basically, and then you can use subscriptions to deliver events to multiple destinations, and that has worked well, because then you can use your events. They can be received by anyone who wants to listen and do something about those events, but you can also send them to some event collector that will basically display a stream of events. So for demo purposes, you can see all the events that are coming through. And that's what we've been doing so far. I mean, there are some.
I was going to say, it feels like that would be a good place for some of us who are less familiar to perhaps, get our feet wet and have a go with the implementation of the Golang SDK as well. But in terms of a strategic coordinated effort, maybe that's something we need to yet figure out. And perhaps there's a supplementary meeting that we need with a view of saying, to the earlier point of how do we collaborate as the actual unit of work rather than the implementation.
Right. It's so kind of like you all are coming to us now, like use this and encourage it. That's what I'm hearing, is we should experiment with this, use it in our prototypes, and encourage projects that come to us to leverage your SDK to be part of this ecosystem. Right? Like if a registry comes and talks to us, or if a delivery thing, then we should bring up, hey, are you emitting CD events? Can you participate with these?
Yeah, I think
I guess we could also.
But both that implementing it, implement support for CD events is a good thing, but also can join us to actually set the standard and make the spec a good one, so that we know that it fits purpose for many different tools in this area. That's, I would say, as important as creating implementations at the moment. But for sure, both are important, and proof of concepts, of course, at least is very valuable to show that it actually works in practice. But both of them are interested to help out with.
You have a link or something to your meetings? I could just put in here.
And if we get to a point where we want to discuss the event broker or the event bus, or what that system actually looks like, especially if we're, thinking through an expansive modular model, I personally would love to be a part of that conversation, and get a deeper understanding of what other people are thinking.
So when it comes to meetings, sorry, well, I pasted the link to the community webpage we have there, and it might be hard to find the meetings from there, but we have in the CD events protocol group, we have meetings once per week. Once it's on Tuesday afternoons, European time, and then once it's on Monday midday, European time. That's when we have the meetings, but it is possible to find them through this. Well, we have a calendar as well. Maybe we should share that one, the CDF calendar. That's where they are actually.
Yeah, I linked the calendar on the document.
Ah, perfect. Yeah.
Thanks.
Good.
So we work on prototypes, encourage projects that we talk to implement, and if we're passionate, participate in defining the spec and refining the spec, join the community.
Yep.
People are so good raising their hands. Andre, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. I think one aspect is sending this event, generating this event. And something I had in one of the first picture is like the incoming side, or like taking decisions on what to do based on those events. So that area is not something that we have done any standardization work yet, but it's something that we felt from the beginning it might be something where it might be an area we build something as part of CD events. So some kind of standard way to receive events, apply policies, decisions, and trigger an API or emit another event as a consequence of that. So there is a lot of potential, I think, in that area to have something like that, some component like that. Some of the tools we have worked with, they already have similar logic or some kind of logic like that. Others they don't, and they would need to build it from scratch. So maybe having kind of common solution or standalone component that could deal with that, and maybe use also again standard technology. You could think, I don't know, defining your policy using some existing policy language, for instance. So that's an area which I think is very interesting as well. And I think it's it's a lot to take for the CD event group right now, but I see us growing, and if we can collaborate even in that area, maybe as guys have experience or ideas in that space, yeah, that would be brilliant.
All right, well, we're getting to time. The only other item on our agenda today was the artifacts working group, which there's a link in there if anybody wants to check on the current state. Eloise, Alex, do we have anything else we want to discuss today, or?
I had one item, yes. It was just very briefly to say that I've opened up a new issue, Josh and Ulis, that I think we probably need to revisit the tag charter. It's 4 years out of date, which is fine. It's a good charter, but maybe we want to spend some time in the next meeting just identifying if there are any particular parts of vernacular or phrasing or technologies that we want to bring into light, whether it be GitOps, AI, etc. Just because it might be a good time to revisit it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's go over it. What we also have to do, by the way, we briefly discussed it at KubeCon, we need to get into the co-chair voting. Again, I'll prepare something for the next meeting. So I'm right now talking with the CNCF what the official process is like, what that looks like. I have some insights, but I will share more in the next meeting in 2 weeks from now. So it needs some more prep on my side to handle it properly. But shouldn't be too hard to do. Just for those of you who don't know, obviously every now and then we need to revote co-chairs. We didn't do it in the past because we had co-chairs leave and new ones coming in. But But now it's actually time to do this as well. I think it goes well together with the work on the charter as well. And I would do actually both, because both will require TOC approval. And we might rather want to do them probably together, at least align with each other. All right, yeah, maybe we regroup with CD events. I would say we let this sink in a bit, see where we can take it, and maybe speak again in a month or so. That everybody kind of process and see where we get from here. I think it's good that we keep talking. I think it's still maybe need some more time to figure out the details of how we continue here, but it's great we are talking. I think especially the work on semantic conventions in OpenTelemetry is definitely something to align on. That's obviously not tech app delivery, but we can help obviously cater and broker this also with the observability tag to get more standardization in there as well on what we put on traces and metrics and events in some cases. So there is like this issue that I posted in here that was already started out of the Captain project, but I would have to like go further to like CD events, see how far we can get there, because I think that would be step one. Having observability in a standardized way for CD events, I think is fine, and it should fit in nicely there as well. That actually might be a good starting point, because that will benefit everybody, whether it's cloud native or non-cloud native to some points. All right, I think we're on top of the hour. Thanks everyone for joining. See you again in 2 weeks, but not just see you again in 2 weeks. Don't forget to obviously also use our Slack channels, reach out there, and also share some updates there asynchronously in between.
Yeah, looking forward to
Thanks,
hearing
everyone.
from you next time.
Thanks for having us here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.